Struggling nurse donates blood to an emergency patient only to learn he's a CEO single dad who come. The sound of monitors and hurried footsteps filled the emergency ward that night, but one voice cut through the chaos louder than the rest. The urgent call for O-negative blood. The patient's life was slipping away by the second. The staff looked around desperately, but the hospital's reserves were nearly empty. That's when Nurse Emily stepped forward without hesitation. "Test me," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her chest. Emily was tired beyond tired. She had just finished a double shift. Her own rent was overdue, and the grocery list in her pocket reminded her she barely had enough left to buy food for herself. Yet none of that mattered when a man's life was on the line. Within minutes she was on the donation bed, the needle piercing her vein, her blood flowing through the tube that would keep a stranger alive. She tried to steady her breath, telling herself it was just another duty. But deep down, something about this night felt different. Hours later, as dawn broke over the city, Emily leaned against the wall outside the recovery room, sipping cold coffee from a paper cup. She wanted to leave, to go home, but she couldn't shake her curiosity. Who was the man she had helped save? Through the window, she caught a glimpse of him. Strong features softened by paleness, tubes connected to his arms, but his breathing steady now. Beside him sat a little girl, no older than 6, clutching a stuffed rabbit and staring at her father with tearful eyes. Emily's chest tightened. She had seen countless emergencies, but this image stayed with her. The girl's fear, the way her tiny hand gripped her father's, it made Emily remember herself at that age, waiting outside hospital doors, while her own father battled illness. She knew the weight of that helpless waiting. She almost walked away then, but something rooted her in place. 2 days later, while on her lunch break, Emily was called to the patient's room. The man, now more alert, wanted to meet the nurse who had donated blood. She entered quietly, unsure what to expect. The man's eyes lifted to hers, a spark of recognition passing between them. He looked at her with gratitude so raw it nearly broke her composure. "You saved my life," he said, his voice raspy. Emily smiled politely. "It's part of the job." But the man shook his head. "No, you gave more than your duty. You gave a part of yourself. That's not something I can forget." The little girl looked up at Emily then, her voice trembling. "Are you the angel who helped Daddy?" Emily crouched down, brushing a loose strand of hair from the child's face. "I just gave a little blood, sweetheart. Your daddy did the fighting." The man introduced himself as Daniel Hayes. What Emily didn't know was that Daniel wasn't just any patient. He was the CEO of Hayes Industries, one of the city's biggest firms. Yet in that sterile hospital room, he wasn't a CEO. He was simply a single father who almost didn't make it back to his daughter. As Daniel recovered, Emily and the little girl, Lily, crossed paths off. Lily clung to Emily's presence, following her down hallways, asking endless questions, and sometimes simply sitting beside her in silence. Emily, who usually kept her heart guarded, found herself softening. She hadn't realized how lonely her life had become until this small child reached for her hand as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Still, Emily reminded herself to keep boundaries. She was just a nurse. Daniel was her patient. Their worlds were too different. She returned home every night to a tiny one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, bills stacked on the counter, and a future that often felt like it was slipping through her fingers. She had dreams once. Dreams of becoming a doctor, of doing research, of changing the world. But after her parents' deaths, she had raised her younger brother alone, put her dreams aside, and settled into survival. Meanwhile, Daniel's life, from the outside, seemed like the opposite. Wealth, influence, opportunities, all at his fingertips. But as Emily slowly learned, money hadn't spared him from hardship. His wife had passed away 3 years ago, after a sudden illness, leaving him to raise Lily alone, while carrying the weight of a company. He spoke little of it, but Emily could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the heaviness in his voice, when he talked about trying to be both father and mother to his daughter, while the board of directors demanded his every hour. Two very different worlds. Yet somehow, in their broken places, they recognized each other. When Daniel was finally discharged, he insisted on thanking Emily properly. She resisted at first, saying she wanted nothing in return. But one rainy evening, he appeared at the hospital with Lily, holding a bouquet of lilies, the same flowers his daughter was named after. "For you," he said simply, "because sometimes gratitude needs more than words." Emily blushed, unsure how to receive the gesture. She had grown used to fading into the background, to giving without expecting anything. But Daniel's sincerity left her no space to hide. From that day, their paths kept crossing. Daniel would stop by the hospital, not with the air of a CEO, but as a man genuinely curious about the woman who had helped him. They spoke about life, about Lily's love for drawing, about Emily's long shifts, and the way she always carried a book in her bag, even when she barely had time to read. He listened, really listened, in a way few people ever had. Yet challenges loomed, like storm clouds. Emily's brother, Alex, had fallen into bad company after losing his job. She found herself covering his debts, working overtime, and trying to keep him afloat. The burden grew heavier by the day, though she never admitted it to anyone. She didn't want Daniel to see her struggles, to pity her, or worse, to think she was using him. Meanwhile, Daniel faced pressure from his board. Rumors spread that his health scare was a sign of weakness, that he should step down. Investors whispered about stability, and rivals circled like sharks. Balancing his role as a father and CEO had always been hard, but now it seemed impossible. The weight was crushing him. In the middle of these storms, Emily and Daniel found quiet moments together. One evening, after a particularly brutal shift, Emily found herself sitting in the hospital garden. Daniel appeared with 2 cups of tea. They sat in silence for a while, the night air cool, the hum of city traffic in the distance. Then Daniel said softly, "You carry so much, don't you? More than you let anyone see." Emily's throat tightened. For once, she didn't deny it. "Sometimes it feels like I'm drowning," she admitted. He turned to her, his gaze steady. "You saved my life, Emily. Maybe it's my turn to help save yours." But Emily shook her head. "I don't need saving. I just need a chance. A chance to believe that everything I've sacrificed meant something." That conversation lingered in both their hearts. Weeks turned into months. Daniel invited Emily and Alex to dinner one evening. Alex, awkward but grateful, felt a glimpse of stability he hadn't known in years. Lily, with childlike innocence, began calling Emily her other angel, a title that made Emily's heart ache with both joy and fear. She knew lines were blurring. She cared for them too much, perhaps. But what if their worlds could never truly fit together? The breaking point came when Alex's debts caught up with him. Men showed up at Emily's apartment, demanding repayment. She scraped together what little she had, but it wasn't enough. Terrified, she finally confided in Daniel. His immediate reaction was anger, not at her but at the situation. "You shouldn't have to face this alone," he said, his voice firm. Emily's pride bristled. "I'm not your responsibility, Daniel," he softened. "You're not. But you're someone who matters to me. And people who matter, we fight for." For the first time in years, Emily allowed herself to lean on someone else. Daniel quietly took care of the debts. But more importantly, he reminded Alex of his worth, offering him a chance at a job in one of his company's training programs. It wasn't charity, it was a hand up, not a handout. Slowly, the walls around Emily's heart began to crack. She saw in Daniel not just a powerful CEO, but a man scarred by loss, fighting every day to give his daughter the life she deserved. And Daniel saw in Emily not just a nurse, but a woman of resilience, whose compassion had carried her through storms most would have broken under. Their bond grew into something neither could deny. But love wasn't a fairy tale. It came with doubts, with fear of rejection, with the echo of their past losses. One night, Emily confessed her deepest fear to Daniel. "What if I'm not enough for you? For Lily? What if I can't fit into your world? Daniel took her hand, his eyes unwavering. Emily, you're not just enough. You're the reason I believe in second chances. You gave me back my life. You gave Lily hope. What more could I ever need? The words sank into Emily's soul, breaking years of silence she had carried inside. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she deserved love. Not the kind that demanded sacrifice until nothing was left of her, but the kind that lifted, healed, and rebuilt. By spring, Daniel's health had fully recovered. Against the board's doubts, he stood taller than ever, declaring not weakness, but resilience. He credited Emily not by name, but by spirit, in a speech that spoke of unseen heroes, of the power of compassion, of how true strength is not measured by status, but by the heart that keeps fighting. And in that same season, in a quiet park where Lily chased butterflies and laughter echoed through the trees, Daniel turned to Emily and asked if she would share not just her blood, not just her care, but her life with them. Emily's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling with the weight of every hardship, every lonely night, every doubt that once told her she wasn't enough. Yes, she whispered. The story of a struggling nurse and a weary CEO didn't end in the hospital that night. It grew in the spaces where pain met kindness, where two broken souls found in each other the courage to begin again. And as Emily held Lily's hand and Daniel's heart, she realized that sometimes the lives we save aren't just others, they are